The brain. This is what separates us humans from other mammals and animals.
So the brain is the head of the central nervous system, which is made up of the brain and the spinal cord. The brain's what's going to receive messages coming in from neurotransmitters and send messages back out.
The parts of the brain. The parts of the brain that make up the brain, of course, include the cerebellum, the medulla oblongata, the pons, the pituitary gland, the hypothalamus, the thalamus, and the corpus callosum.
So the corpus callosum, this is a thick band of nerve fibers that divide the cerebrum into the right and left hemispheres. This also allows for communication. The pituitary gland, it's a pea-sized endocrine gland controlling the body's hormone production. Pons relays messages between cortex and cerebellum. Medulla oblongata deals with autonomic functions of breathing, heart rate, and blood pressure. And midbrain controls visual and auditory systems as well as eye movement.
So the thalamus and the hypothalamus. The thalamus is involved in sensory perception and regulation of motor functions. The hypothalamus is responsible for the production of many of the body's essential hormones. So the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland are closely related.
The cerebellum, or also known as the little brain. It essentially it's just the regulation and coordination of movement, and so that's how you do that. And it also has to do with your posture and balance.
So the cerebrum, it's the largest part of the brain, and it's associated with higher brain functions such as thought and action. And there's gray matter and white matter. Gray matter is made up of neurons, 40%, and white matter is 60%, which is made up of dendrites and axons.
So the cerebrum is made up of 4 different lobes. First, we have our temporal lobe. This lobe's concerned with perception and recognition of auditory stimuli, which is your hearing, since it's located right above your ear. That helps. And memory, which deals with the hippocampus.
The frontal lobe has to do with reasoning, planning, emotions, and problem solving. This is where your motor cortex is located, and that has to do with your parts of speech and movement.
So the motor cortex is concerned with transmitting impulses to the voluntary muscles, and there are 3 parts of the motor cortex, including the primary motor cortex, premotor cortex, and supplementary motor cortex. And then we have the somatosensory cortex, which is concerned with receiving and interpreting sensory information from various parts of the body, and it's also a blanket term used to refer to all of the senses.
So the sensory cortex is found in the parietal lobe, which is concerned with stimuli such as touch, pressure, temperature, and pain.
The occipital lobe, vision, and that's located right there.
So we have neurotransmitters, and these are chemicals that transmit signals across synapses between neurons.
So a few neurotransmitters are epinephrine, which is an excitatory neurotransmitter involved in arousal and alertness. And we also have norepinephrine, which is involved in arousal, alertness, energy, and feelings of pleasure. And norepinephrine can be affected by certain stimulants.
And 2 other chemicals in your brain are acetylcholine and the endorphins. And acetylcholine is it's an inhibitory transmitter involved in movement, memory function, motivation, and sleep. And it can be affected by drugs such as PCP and hallucinogens, marijuana, and stimulants. Endorphins can be affected by opioids such as heroin and depressants. Endorphins are essentially just substances involved in pain relief and reward/punishment.
Next, we have dopamine and serotonin. Dopamine is involved in regulation of movement, reward, and punishment, pleasure, and energy. And all drugs that affect feelings of pleasure include cocaine, opiates, marijuana, heroin, PCP. And then serotonin is involved in regulation of mood and impulsivity. And serotonin levels are affected by alcohol, hallucinogens, stimulants, and antidepressants.
All right, so some fun facts about the brain. The brain weighs approximately 3 pounds. 85% of that is the cerebrum alone. And the bigger the brain does not mean the smarter you are. But the more folds and grooves kind of has been proven to show intelligence. All right, and that's all about the brain.